You're listening to IAM Pulse, a podcast discussing all things identity access management, from defending against cyber attacks and to enhancing your overall cybersecurity strategy. This podcast is brought to you by BioKey International, an innovative provider of flexible, secure access management and biometric identity solutions. We're sitting down to talk about the impact of identity access management makes on you and your business.
On this episode, I'm pleased to be joined by Kushan Fonseca, Director of Network Administration and User Technology at Neumann University, based out of the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania area. Hi, Kushan, and thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Kim. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks so much. And Kushan, one thing I like to do is before we dive into the content, just give our listeners a little bit of a brief introduction about yourself and some of your background and your IT experience.
Yeah, I'm actually originally from Sri Lanka. Now I'm living in the US. I'm in IT industry almost 15 years, 7 years in corporate and close to 7 years in education. From the beginning, I started with the hardware and then moved to networking and then went to system administration and then from there to cloud. And I'm also SharePoint administrator looking at the business processings modules in that platform. At last, my currently role is Director of Network Administration and User Technology at Neumann University.
That's great. That's great. And Kushan, I just found out a fun fact about you, which is you currently speak 3 languages. Is that correct?
Correct. I speak 3 languages. I speak Sri Lankan, I speak English, and I also speak some Tamil.
That's fascinating. And I then confess to you that I speak English. I think that's the best I could say that we've mastered over here on this side of the conversation. So we'll keep it in English today, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you keep it in English, that will be comfortable to me too.
Okay. And so Kushan, great background. Seems like, you've done the hardware, software, cloud, SharePoint. I know you've gotten invested into, the Microsoft suite and products. Now, looking at Neumann, help our listeners understand a little bit about the IT team that you manage, and a little bit more of the structure of IT at Neumann.
Yeah, so Neumann doesn't have a big IT team. So Neumann, my overall team will be like 10 members. They're break into a 2 section. We have 3 members in network security and administration side, and the rest of the folks will be leading on the help desk side and helping the end user perspective. Mainly their day-to-day business will be helping the users and helping answering their questions in the IT field. And in my team, mainly I work with the network team to talk about day-to-day security, what's happening, how is our backups and infrastructure. It's not a lot big, but more productive. I can see this more. If it's a bigger team, it will be less productive. But with this small team, I'm very productive with my team.
Get a lot done with a small power team, right? Is what
Correct.
Yep. And then how about one of the things I'm always curious about is who then you report to or who runs your IT department. Is it a CIO or do you have a Chief Information Security Officer at Neumann?
We do not have a Chief Security Officer. Currently, I have a coworker, John Wyszynski, who's working with me head-to-head with the security perspective. Me and him run security very tight at Neumann. I'm reporting to CIO above me, and that's our IT department. So that's where we are, right?
Okay. Yeah. And I curious because a lot of education institutions out there don't have the dedicated CISO role. So always good to hear and everybody listening and if they have it or not. So interesting structure. And so, yeah.
I'm sorry, I would don't want to interrupt, but the benefit that what I'm getting to is seeing all the perspective is very beneficial to me and my team to make proper decisions. So I'm wearing a security hat, the networking, the infrastructure, the help desk, that help actually to make the best decisions.
That's actually a great point where, actually in the commercial space or other industries, especially with large IT teams, I have heard conflicting priorities between IT and IT security, right? You'll hear that a lot where a CISO may want something, but CIO has other priorities that aren't security focused.
Correct.
Yeah. So, that's a great point that you do. You have kind of the entire bird's eye view, I guess, as we would call it.
Yes, absolutely.
And Kushan, so you and I spoke a little while ago, and since then, we just did a white paper and some research on cyber attacks, specifically, a lot of ransomware and phishing that are really going after the education sector. Your boots on the ground, you're in it all the time. How do you perceive that threat, on the education sector? And does that at all concern you enough and change your IT priorities at Neumann?
It does concern. I mean, if you're talking about security, it concerns every second of every second. And actually, if it's in education industry, if we carry a lot of common things like a school system, and also what application, Word, Excel, PowerPoint platforms, and their own individual LMS systems. And there are many systems they're using here and there. It can be more complicated when it comes to handling the security on those applications. Mm-hmm. So that's being focused. You need to take a look at the big picture, recent attacks and account compromising, phishing, and threats that all actually can be like a headache to many IT leaders. My focus is putting all into one thinking pattern to see where this all happening. Today's the phishing attack. You need to struggle with educating your members, like especially in the education world. You can see like students, most of the educations, I'm pretty sure the students are way advanced than your faculty and staff. So you have to more focus on where your weakness are. So we continue educating the faculty staff will be very helpful to them, as well as you need to protect your application using some platforms, using the common security protocols. Mm-hmm. That's where we're more focusing on. We have currently one product at Neumann. We currently use one product, PortalGuard, that handles all our password headaches. Also, it handles our application headaches. So most of the ransomware, phishing attack, or account compromise happening in the account level. Using a product that can rely on all those areas will help to anybody to protect your application and your environment.
And it's interesting. So we have the technology side on protecting applications, and the research that we had come out, the cybersecurity awareness is interesting, right? Because it's pretty low, right, in a lot of categories. And I would say, this is probably one of the first times where, especially with COVID, and now we're all sitting at home and that's where we do our work, I'm now seeing ads for cybersecurity, which, I don't think we saw on TV very often before. And I love the saying you're pointing out to, that students now are probably more cyber aware than your faculty and staff, right? That's kind of what I'm hearing you say? Okay.
Yeah, that absolutely, because if you provide a new technology to students, hey, we are using two-factor authentication, they're going to say, oh, no problem, we're going to use it. But if you're talking to your faculty and staff member, we're using two-factor authentication, they will ask you what that is. Oh, don't make my password more complicated as it is right now.
I know it's kind of like, yeah, I can imagine the faculty and staff might be the ones that do the classic, oh, I have them stored in a safe file. It's like, well, what's the file name? Passwords.doc. It's like,
Yep,
well,
absolutely.
that may not be, or writing them down or other things like that. So yeah, that's what we heard. And so you mentioned, what would you say the top attacks are that you're most concerned with? I heard ransomware. Is that of a top concern?
Ransomware, we pretty much we have an application control in place with the with Microsoft product.
Okay.
We use app blocker, and also we monitor from our firewall which who installing and who has a permission to install the application, who's allowed to even launch the application. But that's a ransomware side, and also using phishing attack. The account compromise is the bigger headache that we recently dealing with the account compromise. To prevent that, we need to tackle all the system like a single sign-on, and using multi-factor authentication, using some authentication method, actually will help us to do that. Help us to eliminate those phishing attack and account compromising.
Yeah, I have a kind of funny follow-on question for you. So is the goal to prevent a phishing attack, or is it to prevent the spread of a phishing attack?
I think every leaders will try to prevent that first, and eliminating that is, I think that's our main goal. But starting with eliminating those will be the starting point, what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I think that's that's what I've heard. We always do these phishing drills and tests, and try to trick our employees or users, and but ultimately the assumption that I've heard is that it will happen at some point, right? So how do you stop the spread of that account compromise once it has been compromised in the first place? So
yeah, there are some if you have, it depend on what type of attack, it depend on what kind of threat, it depends on kind of a ransomware. So I don't have a clear answer to that particular question, but if you look at your infrastructure, you can actually plan out to being on the cloud. I recommend the cloud very much, because that's where your best buck is, and you will get more protection instead of you manually maintaining and controlling in on-prem.
Right. Yeah, there's much more damage that can be done if you have everything on premise. And going to actually the cloud, that was one of my other sides of the question in terms of the dynamics that we're seeing in education. The rapid adoption of new technology and cloud services to really support that shift to the remote learning that we saw as a result of the pandemic and continue to see, right? It's not something that's over. Did you also have that rapid expansion and need for new technology at Neumann? And how did that change or impact any of your IT and IT security priorities?
Absolutely, yeah. That's a bigger change to us. Even before pandemic, we had the conversations. Hey, we would like to move to the cloud, but it wasn't that much like a financial offices. Like they don't want to technically mainly IT budget run by capex, not like operational budget capex. So they are more of a like dragging their feet to go into the cloud, or that's going to be your operations going to be apex. So then with the pandemic, it actually changed their mind. Now we need to be there, and they know the security risk. And we at Neumann, our CFO actually decided to invest money on going to the cloud. That actually gave us a big boost, and that's a financial point. But in the IT point, we actually have to think about all our applications, what applications we use, what applications we have with the each platform. We currently using Microsoft Azure, and there's nothing wrong with the AWS and Google Cloud if you're in that platforms. But mainly the challenge we had at Neumann, how we moving this application to the cloud. And how we maintaining our security when you're moving to the cloud. Do we have to use their authentication or protocols that if we move to the cloud? So you might facing a lot of security issues, and you have to change the way you think about the security when you're moving to the cloud. With that overall, my vision at Neumann is I wanted to increase the security if I move to the cloud. So some of the challenge we had with some application is you have to decrease the security, but it's in the cloud. But then what you're going to do with how to protecting it. So having a team member that has that knowledge without breaking that security to be on the cloud is very helpful. Like my coworker John Wisniewski he's actually great on looking on those security holes when you're moving applications. And also you don't want to break, you still need to maintain your student records, student profiles, and as well as the authentication model. And with some we have currently we are using PortalGuard, and with that product we didn't have to change any authentications. We maintain all the security exactly where it is. It's tight, and we add some extra layer of security top on it by using Azure Proxy to provide a better protection to the application.
Interesting. Yeah, and I love that saying that you have to think about security differently in the cloud, right? It produces new challenges. It produces also some, cost savings and productivity savings, but it is a different situation altogether that you have to think through.
Correct.
The nuances of it. Just out of curiosity, when the CFO, said, okay, we really need to move to the cloud, and obviously in I would assume a rapid time frame, was security at the table in the conversations to do that, or was it brought to you and your team after the decision was made? How did that happen?
I think especially with my CFO, security wasn't his main concern. The more concern about him is the flexibility that what he is trying to get. Because we saving his whole vision is how to save the cost. I get his point, and also if as a IT been IT field for 15 years, I understand how important the security is. Mm-hmm. So with his vision, we after we moved to the cloud, we able to move all the on-prem servers off to the cloud, and we have our security server, our firewalls also on the cloud as well. That helped to eliminate some overcost, like air conditioning on the server room. We don't have to spend a lot of money on the devices got reduced, the power from them, the heat. That's good for the ecosystem as of right now at Neumann. And also the more for my team is a less maintaining. So we don't go touch the servers to maintain. It's self-updating, and all we have to do is just to keep up with the technology. It's not easy, but it's a great challenge, and which my team is very adapting to that model right now. It's as of an old person, like been 15 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago, we did everything on-prem. But adapting to these ongoing changes, you just need to keep focus on what you need to do, and what's coming with the security, what are the new features, how we can integrate that to our existing system, how we can adapt that to the user. So that's my mainly goal with as of right now with my team, is to let them, hey, the Azure cloud is rapidly changing and adding more system and adding more things to their product. So let's keep up with this, and that way we will be head over with the security. We will be able to integrate those new systems with our products and so forth.
Yeah, so new new challenges, new overhead on your team, but at least what I've heard argued is potentially more effective and more impactful, right? Versus patching vulnerabilities and maintaining server rooms and balancing the costs of that. You're now staying kind of on that leading edge of the security that's available and readily available, right, from the cloud perspective.
Yes. Actually, especially if you have Exchange server, recently you probably everybody heard about this Exchange vulnerabilities.
Right.
To on-prem, I highly recommend to move to the Microsoft Cloud or any cloud if based on what you have. We have Exchange, so we had like a hybrid module. So nothing wrong with the hybrid module too, but there are some challenges you will face with the hybrid module is some of the things you're trying to do in a hybrid you cannot do because it's only available in cloud. So those challenges you will face daily basis. So nothing new, and that means that I have to use the cloud, I cannot use the hybrid. Oh, then you're completely down. So don't think like that. But you if you look at the big picture in any cloud provider, they always focus on mainly the hybrid module, and then it will provide you a step to be in the cloud module. That's what they're doing. If you in an example world, just to give you the full picture, what kind of a challenge we faced with the going to cloud is having a DNS server in the cloud. Some of the some of the product we have in the cloud, we cannot use our on-prem DNS. We need to have a cloud domain services. So we really need a domain services. Can we integrate our application with in this example, our printing application, universal printing? We're trying to implement that. So because of the hybrid module, we faced so many issues that we cannot be in the cloud. Right. But actually, we thought about, okay, of course, it will cost little bit money to be on Azure Domain Services, and we spend that, but we reduce the money by eliminating 10, 15 printers. So you have to really think about the big picture where you need to spend money to save money. That's my whole thing about hybrid module. So it's all about how do you look at the picture and which direction.
Right. Was that the pitch to the CFO? We have to spend money too.
I think more of a CFO. I don't know, that just came from me. He didn't.
Yeah, and I think that you make a great point too. That's why we don't say just jump to the cloud. It's called a cloud migration, right? Because it definitely doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. And also, I'm sorry, I have to say that my CFO is very good with the financial too. As you know, when he's giving me full flexibility. That's the one benefit I am having.
Right.
Like you can educate your CFO and financial officers to be like, hey, I understand you're very concerned about the money, but this is what we can do. Actually, you need to show them a picture. Like if you didn't show them a picture because they don't have a technology background, show them and teach them, if you're spending money over here now, this is where you're saving money. So you always have to look at the other side. You cannot just, as a director, I cannot look at we need to be in the security. We need to, if you do something, show them, here's the end result.
Right. And I think, last time we talked, I called it geek speak, which, maybe somebody likes, somebody doesn't, but that's a lot of times why IT has a hard time communicating to the business to say, no, this is the business value that it will bring us, right? If you just told, hey, we can't be on a cloud-based DNS and we need to move to Azure, it's like you're speaking one of the other languages, right? It just doesn't compute for the business side. So I remember you saying that. That's a great tip for people that are listening in. And Kushan, so just on, we've talked about risks, we've talked about technology adoption and changes. How about anything more specific to IAM? So IAM, I always think of kind of three relative areas, multi-factor authentication, single sign-on, and self-service password reset. Anything high level there that are key projects as you move into this year or even into the next, few years that you think are critical for Neumann?
Yeah, absolutely. That was the one of the critical stage when I started at Neumann. We had student and faculties are using 3-4 passwords and three to get into each system. So that was one of the biggest thing biggest challenge we had to how we can condense and how we can provide one username and password. This is almost 4 or 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the same time, the time passed, we had a security breach a couple of years ago about giving their username and password to some students. So that's another issue with the IT field. We even though every semester start, we have a whole line of students are waiting and to change their password. That's kind of a extra manpower right there that we have to deal with. This is all five years ago.
Mm-hmm.
When I look it up, and when I started at Neumann, and that was one of my challenge. How can I get rid of this whole big line of student waiting on each semester to get the password? At the same time, I have to think about how can I bringing all the application they access to the Neumann into one place.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, that's my first two goal. And then I have to think about how can I provide the two-factor authentication, user validation, and so forth. So that was one of the identity access management that we have right now is PortalGuard help to do that, because it's a single glass of single sign-on and self-service password reset. So we are no longer students or faculty don't longer have to call to the help desk and change their password. And if they call by accidentally, they have their phone. They don't have that cell phone number anymore, but they can call the help desk and to change the password, and we have a user validation method using that platform. And that's not staying there, but beyond within that platform, we can go for a two-factor authentication. We can do validation that help us to eliminate the account compromise, that help us to having credential or identity go into the hackers into hackers hand, and that helped us big time at Neumann, actually. That's where we are right now. And also finding a product like PortalGuard will help to go where you want it to go. Does that help us, especially Neumann? Doesn't matter you're moving to the cloud, you're a hybrid, that solution is fit right into that module. So that kind of took off my overhead headache that, oh, if we move to the cloud, how can we still maintain and manage our IAM? So that's kind of a luck, I guess I can say, but it's finding your right tools to accomplish what you want to do, and seeing the bigger picture to the future will help down the road. So students are very happy with the single sign-on. They only have one password, and hackers are probably sad because we are validating to their secondary email address and phone number before they log in every 3 months. And being flexible to implement multi-factor authentication using that platform is another benefit to us. Actually, we are in the middle of doing that as of right now. You can do it on a couple of different ways. The multi-factor authentication taking off the end user the comfortable level, like I have to log into every time I have to look at my phone, or I have to get an authentication code. That's kind of a breaking point for them. But what we did is, we are implementing as of right now, if you're on campus, we will not ask you to do the two-factor authentication. But you're off campus, if you're not on a campus network, you are required to do the two-factor authentication. So you have to look at the user side as well as the security. That's one of the bigger challenge in any industry. With the education, having a single sign-on and self password reset is you have to concern that it as your number one priority.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think I'm so happy to hear you're doing kind of that contextual based, right? Like on campus, off campus. I think, that's also kind of that future where it's not just the factors that are provided, but it's actually getting into the context or the behavioral data, around the access.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I've always thought of IAM kind of this three-legged stool, right? And as we always say,
Yeah.
without one of them, it doesn't really work so well. So you kind of have to have all pieces.
Yeah. And also, I have to mention that if you're like we have as of right now, most of the old campus they're using key at the dormitories. So we are actually looking into a way that how we can replace that key from each student. So that way, using the card swipe and using the biometrical technology at Neumann as well. So we are stepping into it's not easy, especially in education. They always look like is that going to be a convenience? Yes, of course it's going to be a convenience, and because students are more like to have that comfort level. So if you're using your fingerprint, get into your door room, I think they will be they can be more appreciated. They can be more happy with that.
Right. And on the security side, they can't necessarily share their fingerprint, which is also good for your team. And Kushan, so just one final question I wanted to kind of ask you is, what advice, maybe let's just hone it down to one. What's one tip that you would give other IT leaders such as yourself that are listening in from the education sector?
Yeah, one advice I can give you is don't forget about the security. Put the security on always your top topic. And when you implement the security, look for a cloud, look for all the applications that you use that can be more convenience to the end user, because if you make it a more difficulty, they will not use it. So you have to really concern about what you're trying to do, and look for all the application. Look for every possible scenario that can take your system can be compromised from a security level, and keep the cloud to the top.
Right. So cloud, I love the point. Think about security always first and kind of differently in the cloud, and sounds like make it convenient, right? I think users appreciate it when security is convenient. And so,
absolutely.
Yeah, and so Kushan, that is all the time we have for now. Thank you again for joining me to give really that firsthand perspective about what it's like to navigate cyber risk, as well as these user expectations that are really changing our cybersecurity requirements for educational institutions. You've really shed some light on the firsthand perspective, which I know our listeners appreciate. Anyways, that wraps up today's episode of IAM Pulse. Thank you for listening to our show. If you are interested in learning more, please check out our new white paper on cybersecurity and education by visiting our resource center on biokey.com. You can join us next time to learn more about IAM and how to secure identity the way that you want. Talk to you soon.